Hours had passed. The hospital corridors were drenched in blood and sweat. 12 innocent hostages were in the terrorists' hands, including pregnant women and elderly patients. 3 armed terrorists had taken control of the main entrance, responding to every intervention attempt from outside with gunfire. SWAT Commander Mike Reynolds was shouting into his radio, "I'm telling you for the last time, drop your weapons." But the answer was always the same: more gunshots, more threats. After 4 hours and 37 minutes of this deadly standoff, all tactical plans had failed. Snipers couldn't get a clear shot. Tear gas was too risky with civilians inside. As time was running out, the terrorist leader had delivered his final ultimatum: "You got 10 minutes. Or I'm gonna kill the next hostage." That's when 65-year-old janitor Margaret Thompson appeared at the end of the hospital corridor, pushing her cleaning cart forward with slow, deliberate steps. This gray-haired woman in her modest uniform approached the SWAT team with calm but determined strides. "I'm gonna talk to him," she said, her voice soft but certain. Commander Reynolds spun around in disbelief. "What did you just say?" "I'm gonna talk to that terrorist. Let me handle this." The officers around them exchanged glances. Reynolds shot back firmly, "This is a serious situation, ma'am. This ain't no game. Lives are on the line." Margaret smiled slowly. In her eyes sparkled a secret she'd been hiding for 25 years. The moment she'd been waiting for had finally come. If you're curious about how this story unfolds, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your likes and comments really motivate us. Now let's discover the secret Margaret has been hiding for 25 years. Hours had passed. The hospital corridors were drenched in blood and sweat. 12 innocent hostages were in the terrorists' hands, including pregnant women and elderly patients. 3 armed terrorists had taken control of the main entrance, responding to every intervention attempt from outside with gunfire. SWAT Commander Mike Reynolds was shouting into the microphone, "I'm telling you for the last time, drop your weapons." But the answer was always the same: more gunshots, more threats. After 4 hours and 37 minutes of this standoff, all tactical plans had failed. Snipers couldn't get into position. The risk of using tear gas was too great. As time was running out, the terrorist leader had given his final ultimatum: "You've got 10 minutes. Or I'm gonna kill the next hostage." At that moment, elderly janitor Margaret Thompson at the end of the hospital corridor pushed her cleaning cart forward and walked ahead. This 65-year-old woman with gray hair and a modest uniform approached the SWAT team with calm but determined steps. "I'm gonna talk to him," she said, her voice soft but firm. Commander Reynolds turned around in shock. "What did you say?" "I'm gonna talk to that terrorist. Let me handle this." The officers around looked at each other. Reynolds replied sternly, "This is a serious situation, ma'am. This ain't a game. Lives are at stake." Margaret smiled slowly. In her eyes sparkled a secret she had been hiding for 25 years. The moment she had been waiting for had come. Commander Reynolds felt a moment of hesitation when he saw Margaret's determined gaze. There was a kind of composure in this elderly woman that even a veteran cop could recognize. "Ma'am, please. This is way too dangerous. Our professional negotiation specialists are on their way." Margaret pulled out a small bag from her cleaning cart. She handed Reynolds an old, faded ID card. The photo on the card showed a 25-year-old woman in uniform. Former FBI hostage negotiation specialist Margaret Thompson. 1978 to 1999, 127 successful operations. Reynolds' mouth dropped open. The SWAT members around him also looked at each other in amazement. "Impossible," Reynolds muttered. Are you the Margaret Thompson? The Oklahoma bomber case, the Atlanta bank robbery, during the Waco crisis." Margaret nodded. "Yes. And now I've heard this terrorist's voice. Young, inexperienced, scared. I've dealt with these kinds of situations hundreds of times. Trust me. Reynolds still couldn't believe it. One of the FBI's legendary negotiation specialists had been working here as a janitor for years. Why are you working here as a janitor? A deep sadness appeared in Margaret's eyes. Because in my last case, I made a mistake. A little girl died. From that day on, I never drew a weapon again, never sat at a negotiation table again. But today. A scream echoed through the hospital corridor. Today I can't stay silent. The terrorist leader shouted again, 8 minutes left. Or I'm shooting the old man. Margaret took Reynolds' hand. Mike, trust me. I've been working in this hospital for 15 years. I know every corner, every room. And most importantly, the old determination sparkled in her eyes. I'm still good at this. Reynolds took a deep breath. This wasn't normal procedure, but time was running out and their options were limited. Okay. But just talk. Don't take any risks. Margaret straightened her cleaning uniform and slowly walked toward the main entrance. Each step brought back her old confidence. Margaret Thompson from 25 years ago was awakening. She stopped in front of the main entrance. There were 3 terrorists inside. Their leader appeared to be around 20 years old, wearing a black mask and looking nervous. Hello, said Margaret, without raising her voice. I'm Margaret. I work as a janitor here. The terrorist leader immediately pointed his gun at her. Stop. Don't take another step, old lady. Margaret raised her hands but remained calm. Put your gun down, son. I just want to talk. Talk, huh? You're gonna say the same things as the cops, aren't you? Margaret slowly shook her head. No. I'm not a cop. I'm just an old woman who works here. And you look very young. What's your name? The terrorist hesitated for a moment. This wasn't the kind of question he expected. That's none of your business. Of course it's my business. Because I'm talking to you. People have names. You're a person too. Margaret's calm tone seemed to ease the terrorist's nerves a bit. The other 2 terrorists were also listening curiously. Jake, he finally said. My name's Jake. Nice to meet you, Jake. That's a beautiful name. So Jake, why did you come here? Jake smiled nervously. Why? This system is crushing us. Poverty, injustice. Someone had to pay the price. Margaret nodded. You're right, Jake. The system is unfair. I know that too. I'm 65 years old and I've seen this injustice for years. Jake was surprised. This old woman was agreeing with him. But Jake, Margaret continued, these innocent people aren't part of the system you're fighting against. These pregnant women, elderly people, patients. They're victims of the system just like you. No. Jake shouted. They come here to get treatment. Those with money live, those without die. Margaret slowly took a step forward. You're right, Jake. This system is unfair. But look, I've been working here for 15 years. I've seen dozens of times when patients without money were treated in this hospital. Doctors performed free surgeries in the middle of the night. Nurses bought medicine with their own money for patients. Jake's hands started trembling. You're lying. No, son. I'm 65 years old. Why would I lie at this age? Listen, Jake, let your 2 friends behind you listen too. I understand your anger. But these people aren't your enemies. Margaret was much closer now. There was fear in Jake's eyes. For the first time, someone wasn't shouting at him, wasn't pointing a gun at him. This can't be true. Jake murmured. We had a plan. The media was gonna come, they were gonna hear our message. Jake, Margaret's voice was almost a whisper now. What was your message? What did you really want to say? Jake's eyes filled with tears. My brother died. He had cancer. We didn't have insurance. The hospitals wouldn't take him. He was only 16. Margaret's heart tightened. There it was. The truth. There was always a truth behind these kinds of cases. I'm so sorry, Jake. Losing your brother must have been very hard. You loved him very much, didn't you? Jake started crying. He was everything to me. We didn't have parents. It was just us. And I couldn't protect him. Margaret was right next to Jake now. She slowly reached out her hand. Jake, would your brother want to see you like this? No. Jake sobbed. He was always kind-hearted. He would never hurt anyone. Then do the right thing for him, Jake. Let these people go. They're also someone's brother, someone's child, someone's mother. Jake's hand tremblingly lowered his gun. The other two terrorists also looked at him in amazement. Jake, what are you doing? One of them shouted. This is wrong, Marcus, Jake said to his friend. This lady's right. We're hurting innocent people. Marcus got angry. Are you crazy? Did we come all this way for nothing? Margaret immediately intervened. Marcus, you look as young as Jake. Why are you here? Marcus was determined. I'm not listening to Jake's nonsense. A plan is a plan. But the third terrorist quietly put his gun down. I don't want this anymore. The domino effect was starting. Margaret had seen this hundreds of times. When one person changed their mind, the others were affected too. Jake completely dropped his weapon. Marcus, please. Listen to this lady. She's right. Marcus looked around desperately. Now he was alone. No. No. This can't happen like this. Margaret slowly turned to Marcus. Marcus, you're also a mother and father's son. Would they want to see you like this? Marcus's voice was cracking. They're dead. They died in a factory accident. There were no safety measures. The boss put the money in his own pocket. Another tragedy. Margaret knew these very well. Behind every terrorist was a tragedy. I'm so sorry, Marcus. You lost your parents. But look, there are 12 mothers and fathers here now. They want to go home too. Do you want to cause them pain similar to what was done to you? Marcus's hand was trembling. I don't know what to do. You do know, Marcus. You know it in your heart. You know what's right. Margaret was now standing around all three terrorists. She was talking to them like a mother, like a grandmother. Children, she said softly. You all have great pain. I understand that. I've also experienced great pain in my life. But you won't ease that pain by harming these innocent people. You'll only create more pain. Marcus finally put his gun down. All three were crying now. Margaret called into the microphone, Commander Reynolds, it's safe. They've dropped their weapons. You can come in. SWAT teams quickly rushed inside. The hostages were safely rescued. The three young terrorists surrendered without resistance. Reynolds ran to Margaret's side. That was incredible. How did you do that? Margaret looked tired. I remembered what I learned 25 years ago. Behind every terrorist is a human being. Behind every human being is a story. If you find that story, you find the solution. What about that last case you mentioned? That little girl? Margaret's eyes misted. Sarah. She was 8 years old. Her father had taken her hostage. Divorce case, custody battle. I made the wrong assumption that time. I thought the father would never hurt her. But when that moment came, her voice trembled. He was so sad, so desperate. He shot himself and the girl. Reynolds listened silently. From that day on, I swore I would never again allow anyone's life to be endangered because of my mistakes. That's why I resigned. That's why I came here. To live an ordinary life. But today you came back. Margaret smiled. Today was different. These kids. I saw Sarah's father in them. Desperation, anger, but underneath a deep pain. And I knew that if I approached them right, I could save them. The hospital corridor was now calm. Hostages were reuniting with their families. The 3 young terrorists were handcuffed, but Margaret continued talking to them. "Jake," said Margaret. "What was your brother's name?" "Tommy," said Jake through tears. "Tommy Williams. That's a beautiful name. Try to be someone Tommy can be proud of, Jake. Don't waste the years you'll spend in prison. Study, improve yourself. When you get out, be someone who can really change the system." Jake nodded. Will you visit me?" Margaret's eyes lit up. "Of course, son. I'll come every month." Marcus also approached. "Will you visit me too?" "I'll visit all 3 of you. Because you're not bad people. You're just young men walking the wrong path, suffering." Reynolds was watching Margaret. This woman was truly special. Not just a professional negotiator, but a truly empathetic human being. "Margaret," said Reynolds. "Would you consider returning to the FBI? We need you." Margaret shook her head. "No, Mike. I'm retired. But..." She smiled. "Maybe I could do freelance consulting. For these kinds of situations. That would be great." As Margaret was packing up her cleaning cart, hospital staff began hugging her. They had learned who this modest woman they had worked with for 15 years really was. Dr. Martinez, the emergency room chief, came over. "Margaret, we never knew who you were. Because I wanted you to know only you're Margaret. Not FBI agent Thompson." "Why? Why were you so humble?" Margaret paused. "Because real power is not having to show your power. I saved others for years. But here, working with you all, I was saved." That evening, when Margaret returned home, she looked at the photos in her small apartment. Photos from her FBI years, awards, certificates of achievement. She hadn't looked at them for a long time. But now she felt different. She was no longer running from the past. She had combined her past with her present. The phone rang. Jake's mother was calling. "Ms. Thompson, I'm Jake's mother. The police told me everything. You saved my son." "No," Margaret said softly. "He saved himself. I just showed him the way. I don't know how to thank you. Visit Jake. Take care of him. He's a good kid, he just lost his way." After hanging up the phone, Margaret sat at her desk and began writing a letter. To Sarah's mother. The first letter she could write after 25 years. "Dear Karen, 25 years have passed and I still live that day every night. I never forgave myself for not being able to protect Sarah. But today, I saved 3 young men. And while saving them, I felt that Sarah forgave me too. I hope you can forgive me too. With love, Margaret." When she went to the hospital the next morning, everything seemed normal. But it wasn't anymore. Margaret was no longer just a janitor. She was both a janitor and one of the FBI's best negotiation specialists. And most importantly, she was no longer running from her past. She was using it as a tool for the future. Commander Reynolds called her that evening. "Margaret, I have an offer for you. Would you teach negotiation classes to young officers at the police academy? Margaret smiled. Sure, Mike. I have a lot to teach them. And so, at age 65, Margaret Thompson began a new career. She cleaned the hospital during the day and gave life lessons to young officers in the evenings. Because real stories never end. They just add new chapters. Jake, Marcus, and the third terrorist David continued their education in prison. Margaret kept her promise and visited them every month. Gradually, all three became different people. And in the hospital corridors, Margaret's story became a legend. The story of the janitor FBI agent was told for years. But the most important thing for Margaret was the response she received to the letter she wrote that night. Sarah's mother had written to her, "Dear Margaret, I forgave you long ago. You couldn't save Sarah, but today you saved others." This is the most beautiful gift given in Sarah's memory. With love, Karen. Margaret always carried that letter with her. Because sometimes life gives you second chances. And making the most of these second chances is much more important than losing the first ones. Margaret's steps in the hospital corridors were now lighter. The 25-year burden had lifted from her shoulders. She was no longer just a janitor. She was no longer just an FBI agent either. She was a woman who was both, who had combined her past and present, learned from her mistakes, and started life for the second time. And perhaps the most important lesson was this: there is no age at which we can never catch up. There is no mistake from which we can never return. And there is no life we can never save. Margaret Thompson had learned this at age 65. And this lesson had become the most valuable treasure of her life.